Laurie is, we're super lucky to have Laurie. So Laurie is not only a professional sommelier, but also comedian. And it's just awesome that we could do this. It's quite a novel platform. I don't know if this is like one of the first ever 2D metaverse wine tastings, but I probably would take a guess to say there aren't that many of these. So it's going to be fun. We're going to so those of you who've got the wine, I know the guys there, Margot and the Base 10 crowd, you've got the wine there. We've got some here, and we'll be recording this. So you can actually, if you want to, you can go away and buy. If you don't have them, you can buy the wines after. We'll send you the list. It's actually on the Upstart website, the list of wines, and you can taste them afterwards. But I'll hand over to Laurie, and you can kick off there, Laurie.
Well, thank you so much, Jason, for introducing me as the sommelier, because I did one of these last week and I got introduced as the salmonella, which, as you may know, is a foodborne disease. So we're not going to do that. I appreciate your pronunciation. And we're just going to have fun with 3 wines that I think are just perfect for the holidays. And if there's any year other than last year we need to drink, it's 2021. So let's get started. Let's jump right in. And I love to start with bubbly. Are there any bubbly fans out there? Sparkling wine, champagne? Who loves it? Raise your hand, make some noise. Okay, I see 2 hands at Jason's house. I love that. And I am previously in the software business. I used to sell software back in the good old days. They were what I call the late 90s. Do you remember them? Some of you guys might be too young. But anyway, you could make money doing virtually nothing, and we did. But one of the favorite parts of my job was taking my clients out for insanely expensive bottles of wine. Thanks, IBM. And so I figured I would quit that job. And now I'm happy and loaded all the time, people, all the time. So, all right, loaded is what our word for drunk over here. Okay, so let's go ahead and do our first wine. But I want to show you some gadgets that I like that are more wine technology, if you want to think of it. This here is called the Vin Glacé. I don't know if you can see this. It is like a Yeti or a cooler for your wine bottle. And if you watch, I'm going to unscrew this. And inside of this is the Ferrari Brut, which is our first wine. It's a sparkling wine from Trentino. But basically this will keep your wine chilled and cooled while you set it on the dinner table or out on your porch, wherever you're enjoying your wine. And so you never have to keep running back to the fridge when you want your freshen up of your wine. So we're starting out with that Ferrari Brut. Is anybody, hold it up if you have the wine. I don't know if I see anybody with the bubbly, but this is the perfect way to start out any holiday gathering. And I love Ferrari. It's not a true champagne because we can't call it that unless it's made in Champagne, France. The French get very upset about that. So anything that's made out of the Champagne region, we call sparkling wine. So this is an Italian sparkling wine. It is not a Prosecco. That's a totally different type of bubbly, a totally different place. That's made near Venice. This is made in Trentino, Italy, up in the Northeast. And Ferrari has no relation to the car. I've been asked that many, many times. But the founder has the same beautiful last name. And he started this winery in 1902, basically trying to rival the wines of Champagne. So he learned the entire process of making champagne. This is made exactly like champagne, but it's made with 100% Chardonnay. And okay, except for Russian champagne. You'll have to tell me more about that. I haven't had a Russian champagne. But this is an Italian sparkling wine made like champagne, or method champenois, method traditionnel. And the key there is that the bubbles in this glass, well, you can see my little tiny bubbles, which are important for great sparkling wine, are made right in this bottle. They're not infused or carbonated like a soda or Prosecco is made that way. They're actually made in a very more expensive artisanal way where the bubbles are created right in that bottle. So Ferrari created this in 1902, but sadly never had any children. So he didn't have anyone to leave the winery to, and he found Bruno Lunelli, who was a local shop owner, wine shop owner, and he actually left the winery to the Lunelli family, and it's now in the 4th generation of Lunelli's. So this has a long history. Method, as I said, traditional, or they call it Classico in Italy. It's a nice light way to start. And the main grapes in Champagne, does anybody know? Chat in the window if you know what grapes. champagne or sparkling wines are usually made from? Let's see. Look, this is a little wine trivia. Anybody? They're a little confused about what we do at my daughter's Catholic school. My husband's a chef and I'm in the wine business. So she had to draw a picture of her parents at work. And it was a picture of my husband with a large knife and me drinking wine straight from the bottle. The nuns loved it, let me tell you. They really did. But when she started critiquing that wafer and swirling the wine at her first communion, that was a proud moment for us Forsters. No Cabernet Sauvignon, but good guess, Tommy. Who else? And there are red grapes used in the making of champagne. So that is not a crazy guess, Tommy. I do appreciate you taking that. All right, well, let me, anybody want to take a shot at it? Nobody? All right, let me tell you. There are 3 main grapes used in the production of champagne, and it's Chardonnay. This is 100% Chardonnay, but there's also 2 red grapes used. Pinot Noir, we're all very Pinot Nero, Pinot Noir, the main grape of red Burgundies, and another grape called Pinot Meunier. So those 3 grapes are made into still wines separately and then blended together like a recipe. If you make a wine 100% with Chardonnay, often it's called a Blanc de Blanc. If you've ever seen that on a bottle, that's what a Blanc de Blanc is. I'm seeing some grapes from Turkey that I do not recognize, but I'd love to try. So thank you for sharing those. That's very awesome. All right, so let's talk about sparkling wine. When you're tasting it, it's a lot like tasting other wines, but there's a couple differences. So if you want to just hold your glass up, no matter what you have in there, or your bottle, if it were for Morgan there, if you just tilt it at an angle, we first will look at the wine. The drinking part, that's the 3rd step, sadly. So you want to tilt it, just kind of look at the intensity of the color, which is pretty pale here, and then the shade. So I would say pale lemon. And then with still wines, we would swirl this up, right? We'd swirl it up in the glass, and we're going to do that in a minute. But, and I used to think that was such a pretentious thing, right? Why do they keep swirling their wine? But we actually have a reason. But the one type of wine you do not want to swirl is sparkling wine, because you will swirl those beautiful bubbles right out of the glass. So go ahead and just look at the bubbles. We call it the persistence. Your bubbles should just keep forming from the bottom of the glass and keep traveling up to the top. I always thought swirling was only red wine. Is it for white wine too? Yes, it is, Jason. It's for all still wines, meaning wines without bubbles. So this is the only one we're not going to swirl, but the swirling, and we'll talk about it with the Riesling we're going to taste next, really allows you to look at a wine's legs, and I'll show you how to look at them. Ladies, you don't have to work out for them. Men, they're gorgeous. And it allows you to amplify the aromas, because smelling, which is the next step here, and I want your nose all the way in that glass as far as you can go. Smelling is the number 1 step, the most important step in tasting wine. It's 80% of the process. And without your nose, you wouldn't get all the beautiful citrus floral aromas that are in this right now. Some apple. All of that is perceived through your nose, and I'll get a little geeky, and I know you guys won't mind. Your nose is the gateway to something in your brain called the olfactory bulb. And the olfactory bulb knows what things smell like and allows you to retrieve that and say, ooh, this smells like lemon. This smells like apple. This has a little bit of a brioche or a bread note, which is a classic note to get on well-made sparkling wine or champagne. And that's because when these bubbles are created in the bottle, the yeast cells that are there to do that are left in the bottle for several years. And those yeast cells give it that bready, doughy, really warm note. So the nose, so important. The mouth, not so smart, but still crucial to the process. When you take a sip of the wine, what does your mouth know? It knows sweet, sour, salty, bitter, or savory. Some people call that umami. Your mouth does not know apple, citrus, and all of that is done through your nose. And so if you want to just take a sip of the wine or beer that you have now, enjoy that. Now I want you to hold your nose just like that. Take a sip of your wine. Notice what you can and cannot tell about the wine. You probably, with this bubbly, if you have it, get that acidity up front, but you're not getting all the flavor of the wine till you actually let go of your nose and engage that in the tasting process. And that's why sometimes I do this exercise with jelly beans and have people hold their nose, chew up the jelly bean, the jelly belly. I don't know if you guys have those over there, the gourmet ones, all kinds of flavors. When you're chewing with your nose pinched, you can't taste anything. When you let go, you get the explosion of flavor. And, we all have learned about this over the last couple of years with people losing their sense of smell and taste. You're just not going to enjoy your drink or food without your olfactory. So sadly, hopefully everyone gets that back if they have lost it. In our business, if you have a bad cold, you're not even going to do a wine tasting because you just basically you're not even engaged in the process. One of the most famous wine critics, Robert Parker, I don't know if any of you winos are familiar with him, used to insure his nose with Lloyd's of London, because that's basically in our business, that's your main tool in wine tasting. All right, so sparkling wine, what's it great with? Sushi, things like salads, seafood, oysters. I don't know if you guys I live in Maryland in the States on the coast, so we're all about seafood. Oysters and champagne are great together, and that's because when you sip this wine, you get all those flavors I talked about. The bubbles dissolve really elegantly. That's one of the signs of a well-made champagne or sparkling wine. But you get a little zing of acidity, this mouth-watering acidity at the end, kind of like you touched your tongue to a lemon. And that acidity makes the wine food-friendly with anything with salt. And oysters are briny, salty, right? Or anything with acidity. So anything with a vinaigrette on it or goat cheese, things that have acidic nature are going to pair well with a crisp acidic wine like the sparkling wine. Make sure I'm not missing any questions, by the way, guys. Just jump in here in the chat and or unmute yourself and ask me. I love the Ferrari Brut because it retails about, and you guys had it available at your store, it retails about, here in the States, about $25, whereas a starter champagne is going to start out around $40. So a lot more, budget friendly, if you want to think of it that way. But you're getting everything you can get out of a great French champagne. So I love to introduce people to that. How can you guys readily get Prosecco over there, right? Is that like so popular like it is here in the States? Italian Prosecco. I call it like the Coca-Cola of wine or something, because everyone's drinking it, and much cheaper than even our Ferrari Brut, but it's made in a different process. Whereas we create the bubbles right inside this bottle for this method Champenois wine. With Prosecco, it's made in a large tank, and the bubbles are infused into the tank at one time, and then the wine is bottled. It's also made by a different grape called Glera, which is fruitier, not as crisp and acidic as this wine. And they often make them this is a Brut style, meaning bone dry. And most of the Proseccos that we're seeing on the market these days are extra dry. That sounds like it should be drier than Brut, but not with the French. They make things interesting. Extra dry is sweeter than Brut. So whenever you see extra dry on a bottle, it's going to have a little more sweetness than one that says Brut. Any tips on Hungarian wine? Jan, I wish I knew. We just don't get those wines. Tokai wines, of course, the dessert wines, we get those. But beyond that, we're not lucky enough to be getting all of the great wines there. So certainly dessert wines, those are ones that serving temperature, that's coming from Tommy. Thank you so much. And that was on my list to share with you guys. So I'm glad you brought that up. And sparkling wines, and we'll move on over. Now, I don't know if you noticed my glass. This is a new thoughts in glassware for sparkling wine. Typical flute that you might be used to looks like this, right? But this is a new style because lots of people believe that this broader bowl, and this is a Riedel Extreme Rosé and Champagne glass, and this allows you to get more aromas out of the wine The flutes are great because they keep the bubbly and the bubbles going because of the shape, but you don't get as much on the nose as you do with a glass shaped more like this. That being said, a lot of people believe in drinking champagne just out of a white wine glass. But serving temperature, thank you for that question, for bubbly, around 42 degrees Fahrenheit. Can somebody do the conversion? Because, you know, we could never switch over to metric, people. They started teaching me when I was in elementary school, and then we abandoned it very quickly. So I don't know what happened. But 42 degrees Fahrenheit, which is 5 degrees Celsius, thank you so much for your bubblies. And our kitchen refrigerators here are about 39 degrees, so about 3 degrees cooler than the actual serving temperature should be for bubbly. For white wine, you want to serve more in that 45 to 50 degree range, so a little bit warmer. So when you take your white wines out of the kitchen refrigerator, they're actually too cold, and all those flavors will end up locked up in the wine until it warms up to a proper temperature. Thank you, Tommy. You are the human calculator. I love this. All right. So any other questions on the bubbly before we move on to my featured white wine? All right. And I did put a link to the video on how to savor a bottle of champagne in the thread. Actually, I'll put it here again so it's just easier to get to. If you guys want a little instruction, it's just a quick 2-minute video. It's super easy, and it's the greatest party trick ever. I mean, it's really, there's almost nothing to it. How long can you keep bubbly wine? Oh, Jason, thank you. That's something that I wanted to show you. So you know how I like my tech gadgets, and I have my my vin glacé, but everyone should get this. It's called a champagne saver. And so champagne saver, basically, if you see this white part goes down into the neck of the bottle. You press it down, and then it has these 2 wings that fit up under the lip of the bottle. So now this will stay bubbly and nice for several days. Whereas if you just opened it and left it in your fridge, it doesn't go flat right away. It might still be okay in the morning. But invest in one of these champagne savers. I have lots of them because I love sparkling wine. But if you don't, a little hack trick to do is to put the handle of a spoon down in the hole of the bottle. It won't fully cover the top. That's fine because the spoon top will catch. But what happens is the metal of the spoon handle will get colder than the contents of the bottle and will actually keep the bubbles down in the bottle. So that's a great hotel trick or trick tonight. If you're not going to finish your bubbly, absolutely do that. But after, even with those ways, 2-3 days is probably, your best bet there. With other brands, how much does price matter? Are some overpriced? Morgan, good question. Yes, there's definitely Gucci pricing in wine all over the pricing. And what does that mean? It's a brand name thing. And that's why, in part, Ferrari is more affordable than going to get a champagne made in the same exact way. It's the place. But then Krug is going to be more expensive than, Nicolas Fouillat, which I think makes a great champagne and for a great price. It's a cooperative of 5,000 growers made under one label, which is awesome. Veuve Clicquot is very trendy here. That's always higher priced than some of the smaller unknown names. And so all over the wine business, that's built into it. And so, I believe you should search out the smaller brands or even the regions that you might not think about to find some great sparkling wine. I've had some amazing champagne method wines coming out of Australia. Not a place we'd normally think of for bubbly, but they're really making some delicious bubblies there. And so just kind of, look around and search, and you will find Spain makes cava, which is delicious, and also made method champenois. So that's a great point. Before it gets gross, argon gas. Yes, I'm going to show you the Coravin. Thank you, Jason. I was going to do a demonstration of that with the red. But before we get, I'm talking so much and I'm already 20 minutes in. Let's talk about my white wine that I want to feature. You want to serve that 45 to 50 degrees Fahrenheit, which I think he said was 5.5. The Trimbach Riesling is our featured white wine. And the reason why I love Riesling, and this is a dry Riesling, many people misunderstand Riesling and think it's always sweet. At least that's the misunderstood thing here in the States. Because they've had a sweet Riesling, they assume all Rieslings will be sweet. But many Rieslings and some of the better Rieslings are made in a very dry. There's less than 1% residual sugar in this wine, almost imperceptible. And Riesling is one of the most food-friendly whites out there. It can go with so many different things. If you have a big dinner, you're out to dinner and you want to order one white, a dry Riesling will do the trick. So I'm excited to introduce you guys to that. The Trimbach family, we thought, maybe impressive that the Ferrari family started the winery in 1902. Well, this winery was started in 1626. So 12 generations of Trimbachs making wine in Alsace, France, so up in the northeast part of France. It sounds German because it was part of Germany at one point. It went back and forth for a while. Now it is definitely firmly in the French camp. But the wines are a little more easy to understand because they're labeled by their varietals versus if you go to the other parts of France in, say, Bordeaux or the Rhone or Burgundy, they're labeling the wines by the place. So Alsace is a fun region and makes a lot of sense to a lot of people. All right, so if we look at the wine again, you're getting more of that pale lemon color. But now we're going to get into our swirling, and you notice I'm going to swirl this up. And if you hold it up to the light, you're going to have to do this at home. Eventually, you're going to see little trails of wine. And you can do this with your red too. I know some of you are drinking red. You're going to see little trails of wine dripping down the side of your glass. And those are called the legs of your wine. I know we talk about a lot of different body parts in wine tastings. And actually, if you read any of the wine tasting reviews, like in the Wine Spectator or Decanter magazine, it actually sounds a little bit like porn. So just read a couple of those. I saw some of your comments in the trivia. You might appreciate some of these wine reviews. But when you swirl it up and look at it with those trails going down, what the legs tell us about, and some people call them tears. That's kind of depressing. But what the legs tell you about is the body of the wine. And what that tells us is the lightness or the fullness. And you can pretty much tell a wine if you look at the bottle. If the alcohol is below 12%, that's a pretty light-bodied wine. If it's 12% ABV, if it's between 12 and 14%, it's in the medium-bodied. And if it's over 14%, it's a full-bodied wine. So somebody look on, does somebody have the Riesling, anyone out there, and tell me what the percentage is? I will probably have to get my glasses on to see this. Hold on.
And the base 10 guys have something there. Margot, you should unmute and tell us.
Yes. Do I see 11 or 13?
We have it, it says, it says nothing.
Yeah.
What is the percentage?
13.
13.
13, yeah.
Yes. Thank you very much. Yes. So 13%, that's in that medium bodied range, right? 12 to 14, medium bodied, over 14 is going to be your full bodied wine. So the legs give us a clue. Also, swirling helps you smell it better. It amplifies the aroma. So swirl it up, whatever you got, and then stick your nose in. That will let you smell it better. So here you have amazing stone fruit. What does that mean? Anything with a pit. Peach, nectarine. You got citrus, you have floral. It's very expressive. Riesling is an aromatic grape, meaning lots of aromas on the nose. Go ahead and take a sip. Think about that light, medium, or full on the palate, and then think about that acidity, that little pucker factor, that mouth-watering piece I told you about. Is that a table tennis I'm seeing back there? All right. My mouth is watering like crazy. This Riesling is great with a lot of the things that our champagne was great with. Seafood, salad, breakfast. No, I'm just kidding. But it wouldn't be bad at breakfast, actually, because it goes with so many different things. Sushi. Both of these first two wines, delicious with sushi. I'm obsessed with sushi, as you can tell. Charcuterie, which is cured meats, white meats like chicken or any kind of, fish. White fish would be delicious with this. And even you can go into your hams as well. So Riesling from Trimbach, from Alsace, one of my favorite whites. And does anybody out there have that preconceived notion that Riesling is going to be sweet? Is that only in the States, or is that you guys too? See people moving around. I love it.
I had that notion, but I keep pressing the wrong button. Yes.
There's some very inexpensive, affordable Rieslings out there. They tend to be sweet. So I think a lot of people are in that bandwagon. Okay, so Jason brought it up. Before it gets gross, argon gas. I've been tempted to get the Coravin, and let me show you the Coravin right now and how it works. And if you guys have questions, just keep them coming. Does the spoon thing really work? Yes, it really does. It's a hack. It doesn't work as well as my champagne saver, but let's go ahead and show you guys. You know how I like my gadgets. So let's go ahead and show you the Riesling from Trimbach. Should retail here, retails about $18, $19. I don't know what the translation there is for you all on the Riesling. But our third and final wine, and this is my death row wine. If I could only have one before I go, it's going to be a Barolo, and GD Vajra is one of the best. Barolo is made in Piedmont, Italy. That's the northwest part of the Italy. Piedmont means the foot of the mountain in Italian, and it's at the foot of the Swiss Alps in Italy. And this is called the King of Wine and the Wine of Kings, because back in the day, the kings of Savoy in France and all around would come to Barolo to get their wines, and this was the wines that they would enjoy. These are a little bit pricier, a little bit more of a splurge, as Jason was calling it, but well worth it and great with big fare, like meatier things. And you can see I did not open this bottle, okay, because I'm not going to be drinking it all at 12 noon, almost 1 o'clock here. But I did take a little tasting out of it so that we could taste together. But let me show you how this works. We have a clamp. It's going to go around the top of the bottle. And I have my handy glass here. Already has a little tasting in it. Then I'm going to push this needle down through the cork. My needle is down all the way through the cork. And at the base of the Coravin is a canister of argon, an inert gas. And so now what I've done is created a pouring machine out of this bottle. And I'm going to press the button. Hopefully you can see and hear it. Now I'm not going to pour too much again because I'm not going to drink this. But now I've poured it, and you probably can't see, but it's a little bit, you can kind of almost see the gas in there right now. It's a little bit cloudy in there. Have my extra pour. And it takes a little elbow grease, so forgive me. Now it comes right back out. And the canisters, I think you probably get like, I don't know, 50 or more pours out of it. I use it quite a bit. And you can see now there's a little bit less out of this bottle. You can see. But now I can put this in my wine fridge. I can taste it next month, next year, anytime I want. And this is preserved because the argon blankets the wine. The main enemy of wine is oxygen. So anything you can do to remove oxygen in contact with your wine, that's going to keep the wine longer. And that's why, you know, when you have a half opened bottle of wine, you really don't want to leave it in the regular bottle with all that air. Better to put it in a smaller bottle or to pump that air out or use some sort of inert gas like the Coravin does. And there are ones you can pump right into any bottle that you may open. All right. So let's talk about Barolo. Has anybody had a Barolo before? Chatting in the window, raise your hand. Show me if you've had a Barolo before. Question, maybe. Okay, raise the hand. Perfect. There, you know, maybe a question like, maybe I had one. I can't remember. But if you've had a Barolo, I would think you remember. This is my aha wine that really turned me when I was back in software. That wow, wine is something special. Barolo, like I said, Piedmont, Italy. It's made by a grape called Nebbiolo. You won't see that on the bottle because the Italians label their wine by the place for the most part, and Barolo is a place in Piedmont, Italy, where they make wines from a grape called Nebbiolo. Nebbia means fog, And during the harvest time for this grape, it's typical to have these foggy mornings that will then lift as the days become sunnier. Nebbiolo, it will fool you. I don't know if you can see that it's not very dark in color, actually. And if you tilt your glass, you can actually look and see your fingers through the wine. It is not that intensely colored wine that you might see with a Petit Syrah or a Bordeaux or a Cabernet Sauvignon. So that make you think maybe this is a little bit like a Pinot Noir. Maybe it's a light sort of, not so intense wine. And then you would be majorly wrong, because Nebbiolo packs a punch in a few ways. So we have this sort of medium ruby color here. If you give it a swirl, you should be able to see so much more with your legs here this time, because you have the color contrast. These legs are going to take a little bit longer to form for the most part, and they're going to fall a little bit more slowly. And why is that? It's the extra alcohol percentage in this wine that's slowing those from falling down the glass. And that's why we evaluate them to get an idea of the body, right? Is this light, medium, or full? Here we're moving to a fuller wine. This is going to see 18 months in oak. But the Italian, especially the winemakers of Barolo, believe in large Boti, very large barrels, Slavonian oak. So they don't use those smaller barrels that you might see in Bordeaux or in California if you've come over our way. And then swirl it up again and stick your nose in. One of the beautiful things of Nebbiolo, Barolo, and its sister counterpart, Barbaresco, if you've ever had that, is this red currant, cherry notes, along with roses, but even interesting things like tar, sort of licorice. Just every time you go back, you're getting something different on the nose. Or now, as we go to take the sip, go ahead. You're probably noticing not that mouth-watering acidity we got with the other two wines, but tannin. And tannin comes from the red grape skins. Not all reds have firm tannins. This one does. Do you see how your tongue is like devoid of moisture? The roof of your mouth, super dry. Well, tannins come from the red grape skins. Nebbiolo is very high in tannins, as is Petit Syrah, Petit Verdot, Cabernet Sauvignon. These are grapes that are higher in tannin. Grapes that are lower in tannin, Pinot Noir, Gamay from Beaujolais. Those are juicy and easy to drink. They don't have this dry astringency. I see Jason and his better half there eating. I'm thinking maybe there's some cheese going on there. Somebody mentioned cheese out there.
I'm not going to lie. She did bring some cheese. She said, should I get cheese? And I thought, okay.
Yeah. And here's the good news on what you're doing right now is that I always teach people to try wine with their food, because I believe wine is part of the recipe of your meal. And tannins, firm tannins like this wines have, are a great pairing with things that have fat, animal fats, cheese and meat. They're going to smooth these type of reds right out. So you take a sip of the wine without the food, you feel that real astringency. You go to the cheese or the piece of meat, you savor that. Then you go back to the wine on the second sip. It's what I call a wine sandwich. Wine, food, wine. And on the second sip, you'll notice that wine just smooths right out. And that's the whole idea of a great food and wine pairing. The fats in the cheese or meat make that wine even better. It's kind of like teamwork, right? So the same thing would happen with the Riesling and something a little bit salty or something a little bit acidic, like our goat cheese or briny oysters with the sparkling wine. So the two, if you're doing a pairing right, the wine tastes better after the food than it does all by itself. And some wines you won't like without food, but with the right pairing, you would really, really enjoy them. Other wines are, what I call them your porch pounders. Wines that you're just going to drink on the porch and you don't need any food, but those aren't always the best for a really nice meal. So some wines you're going to taste and go, I'm not sure, but do them with the right food pairing and it will change. It will blow your mind and change your whole thought on that wine. Albe. So GD Vajra is the producer here. It's their Albe Barolo. This is the 2017. It's aged for 18 months, like I said, in oak. And so, the winemaker is basically investing 2 years of not getting their money back, right, to make this wine more approachable when you buy it and ready to drink when you buy it. Barolo, whereas the other two wines you want to drink within 1 to 3 years for the most part for any whites and sparkling wines, non-vintage. And with red, this is one of the reds that can age. So this can go 10, 15, 20 years of aging. And the reason why it can is that tannin is a preservative. So that tannin will dissipate over time, that astringency, and it will become a smoother, softer wine as it ages, kind of like us people. But, more beautiful and more delicious, but maybe not the packing the punch that it has right now. So the more tannic the red, the more meat or fats you want in your pairing. The softer the red, like our Pinots and our Beaujolais, you can do with lighter things. So one of my favorite pairings with a Pinot Noir, which you could never do with a Nebbiolo, is salmon. Salmon, you would think red with a fish, what? That's against the law. But it works well because Pinot has a lot more of the qualities of a white, whereas big reds like this one or Cab or Bordeaux are too much for that salmon, or just kind of clobbering right on top of it. Keys to food and wine pairing. I showed you the Corvin. I alluded to it, and I know, does anybody ever have leftover wine, or you just finish the whole bottle every time you open it? Anybody? Nobody's going to admit to it. All right. Well, I do sometimes. And the key there is anytime you have a bottle of wine that's open, you want to put it in the fridge once it's open. And I mean red too. Put that in the fridge because that lower temperature will stop the deterioration of the wine. Also, you want to make sure that oxygen is with little contact, and I mentioned that earlier. So get a half bottle, and I wish I had one around here. Have you guys seen a half bottle of wine? The smaller format, it's only 375 milliliters. Get one of those, open it, drink it, enjoy it, clean it out, keep it clean and dry around the house. And when you have that half bottle of wine, put it into the smaller bottle, because now you've reduced the wine to air ratio. Cork it up, put it in the fridge, and you can get a few more days out of it, whether or not, if you left it on the counter with all that air working on it, maybe it'd be okay the second day, but maybe not the third. So just a little savings tip for you. Any questions? I know, Jason, I think I got to everything you asked, and Morgan with your awesome question about price and when does that matter?
I have a question. If you do like back-to-back tastings with maybe a couple or 3 different wines, what's your preferred way of like resetting your palate and smell?
Yeah, great question. And so when we're doing tastings, one is the order. You always want to, wine festivals are coming back and all these different things are coming back. And usually when I go, and there could be, hundreds of wines, right, that you could potentially taste, I have a strategy, because we always want to taste sparkling wine first, white wine, red wine, and sweets are always last. Sweet wine will kill your palate for everything else. So if you don't go in that order, you're really gonna have trouble. So that'd be the first. So when I go to a tasting like that, maybe where there's hundreds, I'll be like, okay, I'm gonna focus on sparkling and white right now, kind of walk around and do that. Spitting, in professional tastings, that's what we do, because you'll get much more out of it. But you have to, if you're not going to be spitting, you really have to prioritize, because after 7-10 tastings, you really are going to be impaired. And that's why I always joke that if you go out visiting wineries, the stuff you buy at the end of the day, and when you get home, you're going to be like, I thought this was good. I mean, really? And that's because everything tastes good at that point. Your palate is pretty much done. So water is really the best, or very plain crackers, but anything that has salt or anything in it is going to affect your palate. Some people use coffee beans as far as resetting the nose, because even if you're spitting, your nose sometimes can get fatigued. But there really is only a certain number of wines you're going to be able to taste before, even with spitting, you can feel that the alcohol is affecting you. So prioritize, make sure your order is right, and just know that after maybe 20 tastings that it's gonna get difficult. Awesome. Good question, Tommy. Are you gearing up for any wine festivals or tastings?
No, but I have done coffee tasting, and I was curious on how that translates to wine tasting.
Yeah, yeah. And a lot of people will kind of talk about tea tasting and map that over to wine. So like tea with lemon gives you some of the qualities that we had here with this Riesling, right? With that acid from the lemon. Or, tea with milk. Think of a creamy, buttery Chardonnay that actually has that kind of texture. Or just plain black tea that has that astringency to it, more like what we're experiencing with the tannin. And there is a tannin in tea and the tannin in this last wine. So that there is a big crossover. Chocolate tastings I know are very popular too and they kind of go through some of the same process. We always look at the wine first, then smell, use our swirling as the amplification, the tasting, and then talk about the wine, the body, the aromas we smelled. And then the two things that we focused on today were the acid and the tannin. And then the last step is always trying it with food. So don't forget that one. Awesome. What do you think, Jason? I don't know if there are any more questions, but did anyone get to taste all three besides me?
Maybe the base 10 guys. Where are you guys? Let's have a look. Did you have all three? Where did you guys go? Maybe they vanished. They were here earlier. I think they are. Margot, yeah, exactly. Margot, are you guys tasting all three? I think they did.
Okay, I'd love to know what was the favorite wine? They're having so much fun. They're all.
I only had the red one. That was really good. The Barolo. That was awesome. Really good.
I love it.
My favorite tip was I didn't know about the fridge thing. That's really cool. I've actually got one of those kind of suction things. But yeah, I've been interested in the argon thing, but it's, as you say, it's big investment. I think kind of works for the slightly more pricey bottles. If you want to buy a really pricey wine and then keep it for a long time, it's essentially keeping it for like years or something. It really saves a long time.
And the founder actually invented it when his wife was pregnant and she couldn't taste wine with him. So he thought, well, I can access this wine, have a little bit now, but then we can wait and taste the rest of it when the baby's born. So
really cool. I discovered it in Sweden because in Sweden, alcohol is so ridiculously expensive. And this guy in a bar came and I ordered like a decent wine and he's just like, psh, and opens this thing. I'm like, what's that? It's like, yeah, it's an argan oil thing because, I mean, obviously, like if you're buying a 2,000 krona bottle of wine, I mean, it's and you don't get that many customers, it's kind of hard to open the bottle for one customer. So it's really good for bars.
Yeah, well, it's great for restaurants. That's what in the States, a lot of people are using it for. I'm going to put my YouTube channel in here. While we're not doing stand-up comedy here, there are some clips of my stand-up comedy there. I didn't haven't seen it. I did write a book called The Sipping Point, A Crash Course in Wine. It's available as like a Kindle version and all over Amazon in whatever language you want. And I have a free app for iPhone and Android that you can download. It's just called The Wine Coach, and it's got a lot of my wine picks in there and all kinds of great stuff. And if you guys go to thewinecoachsecrets.com, I have a four-part video series on wine glasses, wine tasting, pairing, all kinds of stuff that you guys can download for free. So I guess I appreciate you having me with you, and it allowed me to network with my former tech industry folks.
Yeah, this is awesome, Laurie. Thank you so much. I learned so much, and this was such a fun format. It was really nice to.
This is really fun, yeah.
It's my first metaverse, so I.
Yeah, me too. Yeah.
Now, can anybody just access this Gather Town whenever they want? Like, how does that work?
Yeah, it'll probably, I think at some point it gets wrapped up. I mean, we have this, I mean, Gather's been really awesome. They've given us this partnership and given us a lot of perks, but they were quite interested in what we were doing because it's kind of testing the boundaries of this whole platform. So yeah, I think it's kind of cool. I think, and I guess you maybe saw, since you're in the tech world, with Mark Zuckerberg announcing with Facebook being now Meta, and it's kind of everything is going into the metaverse. So I mean, I think this is kind of not going to go away in a long time. So we were kind of on the, I think, forefront, really. There are many tech conferences doing these kind of things. So this was really fun. I mean, this is the perfect format. I think, like, if you take this, and we did a wine tasting last event with Prototype. It was like a design agency, and they arranged one. And it was in Hopin, the platform we had earlier. It just didn't have that punch, and this just feels a bit more like interactive. And so thank you so much for jumping in, and you were the perfect person to do it. I mean, with your tech background, and so let's do it again soon, hopefully.
Absolutely.
Tom's
Thank you so much.
dancing right now. I don't even know how you do a dance, but he's dancing.
He's dancing? Somebody said Z for dancing, but I don't know if you know.
Hold Z,
I think we should all press Z and do some dancing, because I think you're worthy of some dancing, some group dancing. But thanks so much, Laurie. It's been awesome, and I don't want to keep you for too much longer. But we'll definitely get these out, and we're recording all this, and we're going to send this out to everybody after, so we'll make sure you get some good plugs on this stuff. And thanks for your time today.
Just have a great night, guys. And there's a great old proverb that says, over a bottle of wine, many a friend is made. And I feel like I have some new friends in Sweden. So you have a new friend in Maryland in the US. So come visit. I can't wait to come visit you guys or see you on the metaverse.
Thank you so much. Thanks, Laurie. And thanks everyone for coming.